You are listening to the ESEE Rat Pack podcast. I'm your host today with Patrick Rollins. This is being recorded on National Knife Day, along with our special guest, James Gibson. Welcome, fellas.
Good to be here.
Good to be here, yes.
So, I wanted to reference real quick a YouTube video that I did with you, James, a good while back, and I'll be sure to put that in the show notes. It talks about some of your early kind of what got you into the skills and stuff, so I'll drop that in the show notes. But today I had a special topic for two of our, Patrick being our lead instructor and James being one of our more prolific instructors and knife designers. I really want to talk about what do you see as essential skills for outdoor, I don't even want to say survival, but I want to say essential skills for outdoorsmen, outdoors women, I guess, and essential tools. So, and we're here in the temperate southeast, so these skills may change a little bit as you move to other climates. But Patrick, I want to kick it off to you first. What do you see as one of the most vital skills to have in the arsenal?
Probably one of the most important ones that could keep you from getting in trouble to start with is being able to navigate. Learn land navigation. Everybody nowadays is used to technologies and apps and GPSs and stuff. But be able to navigate without that, even just terrain association, being able to figure out how to get back to where you want to be, if you get turned around. And if you can do that, then that avoids you having to do any of the other skills you may know.
So I want to go ahead and draw that out a little bit on terrain association for people that may not understand that.
Yeah, it's being able to figure out where you are and how you want to get to where you're going by judging what you're seeing, the terrain you're seeing, whether it's elevation, creeks, wet weather creeks, anything like that.
Prominent peaks that we're lucky in North Georgia where we live, and also where James lives up here in Tennessee, to be able to identify prominent peaks and kind of use that as a reference. But that terrain association gets harder when you like topography.
Oh yeah. If you're going to be in a certain area, take the time beforehand to study maps. Look at Google Earth. Look at any information you can pull up on the territory you're going to be in, and at a minimum have a general idea of what direction you need to go to get back to a major artery, such as the trail, forestry road, whatever that might be. Just have a panic hazard, so to speak.
That's something that we see a lot, where there's a lot of folks that the squiggly lines on a map don't mean anything to them. And so, James, what are your thoughts on navigation?
I think navigation is crucial. And I've been reading more. If I find a new survival book, I buy it and look at other people's ideals. I've been studying this for 30, 40 years, I guess, something like that. And signaling and navigation, because if you can get out of a situation, then you don't have to use the skills as Patrick said, so I think it's very crucial. And if you can't get out, then you want to be some way of signaling. And you need to always leave something behind of where you're going to be at, how many days you're going to be gone.
Leave an itinerary with somebody.
Yes, with somebody. Like if my wife went home, I'd leave something on the table, say, I'm going over here to Magcap Bottoms, I'm going to go fishing today. If I'm coming home this evening, if I'm not going to be back, if I somehow don't get back, then she'll have some idea where to start looking for. So I think that's crucial too.
Yeah, I think in 2021, ratsar.org, for those of you that want to pay attention to our nonprofit search and rescue team, I think we ran over 40 individual calls last year.
Something like that.
And I think, I'd have to pull the stats on our database, but I think over half were just missing people, just lost, where they just got out and got turned around. And navigation is something that I think it's obviously a perishable skill to us.
It is.
You have to spend time in a map.
Right. You guys are doing this constantly because you teach it, And I took it probably, 2 years ago, I guess, last time I took it, and I'd like to take a refresher course now. To me, it is perishable, like knots. Knots are perishable to me. There's a few knots you'll always remember, because you use them. If you don't use it, you lose it. You'll see this.
Yeah, that's the navigation skill is one that I agree with. Patrick and I are, I think, probably the last generation is going to be paper driven, and everybody else behind us is very much a digital mindset. But we were probably the last generation that actually spent time looking at maps to go. Like we had to pull maps, had to pull quads, USGS quads to go do stuff. You know?
Or even just driving somewhere, having to look at the map and write down turn by turn.
Oh yeah.
I remember, guys, we had the atlas in the car, me and my wife, and I said I want to go out west. They're going to the beach, So we took off out west. We just used a map. We didn't have GPS. We went everywhere we wanted to go. Made it all the way back. Of course, by interstate and things like that. Readily available to anybody. But it's we learned that skill years ago, and like you said, it's not perishable, but it's skills that you all are getting to do every day that's still on the paper. And I'd a whole lot rather have that type of learning as to have with GPS and all that stuff.
Well, I love GPS. It certainly makes life easier, especially on navigation, like getting up here with Papa.
But if it goes down.
And, Patrick and I spent 2 weeks on a road trip a couple years ago, and we were in Utah, Colorado, Idaho, where else? I think that's it. But we spent days in a brand new rental vehicle with a dot on a blank map. No roads, no nothing. And I can't remember if we had to go buy Atlas or what, because that area that we were in, the remote area of Utah and even parts of Colorado, weren't on our GPS, or we didn't have enough cell phone service to download it, and we spent days that way. So being able to have some navigational chops as far as gross directional skill and kind of meandering our way. James, I've been married 24 years, and my wife and I were school teachers when we first got married. We spent our first couple summers out west just dirtbagging around, living out the back of a truck. And we used to Rand McNally Atlas everywhere we went. And Gazetteer, nobody knows what Gazetteer is anymore, but that's the more detailed maps that you get, and you buy them state by state. And I still have a collection of those maps because you never know when they'll be useful again.
I think everybody should take a map and compass course. At least one time, then buy you a book you can fall back on. I got a couple of books on navigation, which is handy. And just learn that compass inside and out. It's crucial. And like I said, signaling as well. As far as not just traveling on the road, but if you get lost and things like that and you can't find your way out. They say stay where you're at. Most everybody does, and it creates less problem if you've left an itinerary where you're going. You'll stay where you're at. If not, then you're on your own.
Yeah, they don't even know where to come look for you to start with.
So when we're talking about signaling, James, can you go a little bit? How would you? Who are you signaling, and how would you accomplish that?
Signaling would be for anyone that would be out there that I might could come in contact with you, hopefully. But I would use smoke first from the fire, because they're going to be watching the mountains. If there's a fire, they're going to be notifying somebody, and they're going to come and look for it, hopefully, And if I build a signal fire, we done one in Canada when Patrick and I were up there with Morris Kahansky, and it was a huge, that thing billowed and billowed and billowed. But you got to get your fire going, then you're going to use the greenery, like pine boughs and things like that, to create a lot of smoke. You want to use, of course, if you got your cell phone, if you're not getting a signal, you can always try texting, because they say text goes out sometimes when the caller won't. Try that as well. You definitely need your flashlight if you're going to be out like that. We said it's not about survival, but in a sense it is, because you're out there. If you get in trouble, you're going to have to survive.
Well, our goal is not to, honestly, our goal is to never have to use these skills that are practiced called survival skills. Navigation will help you avoid the use of those skills.
Right.
But even still, I always say Murphy comes to visit when we least expect it. And if we're traveling 364 days a year, fully prepared in our own vehicles, where we're just ready for whatever comes, the one day it will happen will be the day we're riding with somebody else and we just got what we got in our pockets.
It's also in case of an injury. Maybe you know how to navigate out, but now you got a broken ankle or whatever, being able to get help to come to use. So carry a whistle or a minimum.
Right, that's a good thing
No.
there.
Just from our time on the search and rescue, a whistle, you can blow a whistle all day, and you
Yes.
can only scream and yell for a certain bit, and the whistle carries so much farther in the mountains, penetrates the vegetation, whereas a human voice just gets drowned out by wind and everything.
Well, you get hoarse too. A lot of kids been lost in the Smokies right here where I live. And I've always said that if you take a child in the Smokies, be sure they've got a whistle, because a whistle will keep blowing like you just said. And you want a good DPI. I think mine's still made at the Acme Company. It's stainless steel one made in the Acme Company in England. That's where the first whistle was designed, was right there. Because they had rattles. The police officer did. They'd shake them rattles, in the streets trying to get help and all this stuff, which, I don't know how far a rattle will carry, but they heard at a soccer game somebody blow a whistle, and they thought, wow, what's that,
Yeah.
And so Acme Company went in business, made the whistle, and mine's, I think, 61 or 62 DPIs, which is extremely loud. And it's great also when you got them prank callers and stuff at night, and just call you on your phone. Believe me, they will throw the phone down when you do that.
I bet.
That's another survival technique, folks.
That's a modern day survival for spam calls.
Yes.
Called off your vehicle warranty.
Yes.
You mentioned an injury, and that's kind of what set me off personally on my quest to get more training. Is I grew up like everyone in the South. I grew up spending a lot of time outside and got into doing some of these long, kind of epic, unsupported mountain bike rides. And a friend and I were doing a pretty remote ride. It was very cold, and I think I don't know how many creek crossings we had, but I tended to dress back then in a way that would incentivize movement. Like, I didn't want to carry a whole bunch of extra weight. The first 8 miles of this particular ride was about 2,400 feet of climbing. So, it was on gravel road. At this point, it was frozen. It was so cold with a mixture of snow and ice. And it never said we were smart, and then we're going to go hit this really remote trail that had, roughly 20 creek crossings. And once again, better be tough. And we got about halfway down, really technical trail, really fun, can be fast in places, some big jumps, a lot of technical rocks, riverbeds. And the buddy I was riding with went over the handlebars and came to rest with his hands on either side of this massive wedge-shaped rock. And his face was inches from that thing. And all I could think about was, there's no way cell phone's getting out. There's no way I'm going up. And my real concern, had he been knocked unconscious, it could have been, facial breaks, all kinds of stuff. The main thing I thought was, I don't know how I would keep him alive, because he would likely die of hypothermia before we could get, because you couldn't ride four-wheelers in. You would have to hike people in with a stretcher or furlough or something, and it would be hours to get where we were going to be. And I was thinking,
You had no gear, no.
I had
way to
minimal
start a fire.
gear, cycling gear,
Yeah,
and not even, I didn't even have really enough clothes to give.
Well, and as far as survival goes, your clothing is your first form of shelter.
Right.
And it's crucial for the season you're in. Even in the summer, people are running shorts, flip-flops, and on trails. I've seen them in trails and Smokies with a t-shirt, pair of shorts on flip-flop. There's a group of like 6 of them. And they were trying to find their way back out. And I said, you need to go back this way. And they, it'd be dark when they got out, if they got out. Because I was headed to a different direction that I had another vehicle there waiting. And they were very unprepared, because it gets up in the mountains, it can change just quickly. You get really cold at night, even though it's summertime. Several
Weather
degrees.
can roll, thunder shower, afternoon thunder
Yes.
shower comes in and drops the temp real quick.
So it pays to be prepared no matter what. My grandkids, I see them run around in the wintertime, pair of shorts and t-shirt, they're in their vehicle and they run in the house. I said, have you got a coat in the car? Well, no. I talked to them about that. My daughter, I said, you need to make them do this, honey.
That's
if you
my
ever,
wife. I haven't
if you
kept
ever
my
get,
wife.
ever
The
get
jacket.
caught out like this, you have to walk a long ways, you're freezing. You know, I've had cars break down when I was young, and I didn't have nothing. Blue jean jackets, what I always wear them days, with my jean pants. So I'd always have that in the vehicle in cold weather. But you got to be prepared somewhat, you know. I think it's crucial. You need a way to start a fire. You need a way to either know how to build some kind of a shelter or have a small tarp with you. The little 5x7 ones they sell at Walmart is better than nothing.
Okay, so before we get into shelter, what I'm going to want to do is we're going to circle. So we've talked about the first skill really is navigation and signaling. So what we're going to do here is we're going to loop back around to that, and we've talked about the skill. Now we're going to talk about the gear that we prefer as far as what we like on that. And all right, so on the topic of navigational gear, Patrick, what do you like?
I like mirrored base plate compass, Sunto, MC, MC2, and know how to use it. That's the big thing. Whatever you get, always know how to use it. That, notepad, any kind of navigation, have a notepad or pencil, because you're going to be taking notes. It's hard to remember all the stuff over time. As far as navigation, if you're using a GPS, have it. If not, if you're just using
Know how to use it.
have a map. Yeah, know how to use the GPS.
Dropping a waypoint at your vehicle. Most people have a GPS, they know how to turn it on, and that's about it. So to be able to drop a waypoint at your vehicle, to be able to go through the waypoint manager and then navigate back to that will help you immensely. James, navigational tools or signaling, we can talk about that too.
Pretty much like what he said, a good compass. There's several out there. The Sunto is considered one of the best. I mean, any compass is better than no compass. I remember the movie The Edge. He took the needle and the leaf in the water, and I've read about that several times. Never tried it, but they say it does work to give you just north, and that's all you're going to get. But you can use the sun. You put the sticks in the ground, find north and south when the sun's out, so you know which way to go.
But that's in direct sunlight, and that,
Yes.
I would say that's far more of an advanced skill than what most people are going to have. Way easier to carry a compass.
Right, but I'm saying if you don't have one,
Oh,
you
yeah.
know, you need to
Yeah.
find your bearings some way. Climb a tall tree, see if you spot something familiar,
Something
you know,
that looks familiar.
which is kind of dangerous as well in itself. But signaling like a signal mirror for airplanes, I've seen people take the old flashlights had the round cone shaped thing, and they'd use that. And that's pretty much what I think of right now about that subject. But it is crucial.
So, a couple things that I've seen and noticed is we talk about not all compasses are created equally. The compass that we recommend and endorse is the Sunto MC2 Northern Hemisphere or the Global. The difference is that the global needle has more up and down travel, so that you can travel in the southern hemisphere and the needle doesn't drag. So we get people like that a lot. So if you only plan on staying north of the equator, that northern hemisphere is fine. If you plan on traveling to Australia or to the jungle with us in Peru, you're definitely going to want that global. So it gives that needle more travel. A couple things I've noticed is that I am seeing whistles integrated into more and more gear. Osprey Packs has got, I think they're really some of the ones that really set the tone or set the expectation or look for the opportunity to include whistles into buckles. I even have a Leatherman Signal micro tool or a multi-tool, not micro, multi, that has a signal, has a whistle in it.
Even some of the Farrell ones, Swedish Light Not Fire.
Yes, right off the striker.
Even the Wazoo gear has that little whistle. It's extremely
Oh yeah, that
made out of
little
aluminum.
aluminum.
Yeah.
Super loud.
And it's small, compact, easy to carry.
Yeah, and whether it's on a keychain or whatever else. Signaling, something that people don't think about is bright colored clothing.
Yeah.
You take an orange tarp or a bright colored jacket, a bright colored hat, anything that you can wave to somebody and see. Obviously, kind of a dual, you get double the money for it is fire. the ability to make fire, to create warmth, to create a mood lifter, but also to create a signal is good there. As far as the one thing that we didn't mention that I like is, I'm not just saying it because we make it, but our navigational notebook
Yes.
with the compass cards is about as good as it gets, I think, as far as having one package to where it's small, it's a right in the rain
Don't
notebook.
weigh much. Yeah.
Has all the information you need, whether it be a scale card or road compass rows or whatever else is there. Even has the ability to kind of tell you how to use it if you're in the field, although that is not the time to be practicing navigation, is when you're already lost.
You mentioned fire. That's another one that's, I would put that right behind the ability to navigate. Be able to make a fire. Everything's wet. When you're tired, if you're injured, so don't just practice making fire on a nice sunny day in the backyard. Try it in the middle of a rainstorm. Try it when it's cold outside.
Blowing snow sideways. I get out here and do it.
It's always, usually when you need a fire the most, that's when it's going to be the hardest to make.
It's the worst, yeah.
It is.
James, your thoughts on fire?
Fire is, well, as a Tom Brown student, fire was the first thing that we taught. I'm sorry, shelter, then fire was the second thing. But now I put signaling first, trying to get out, and I've also put navigation up there now too. I've changed on that. I've been reading after a new guy that I can't think of his name right now. In his book, he's always taught that. And he was from Australia, moved to America, was in the Air Force, was a SEER teacher and all that. Taught in Alaska, taught in a lot of places. He's always said navigation is very crucial in signaling. But fire, that's another point of signaling. People can see your fire as well. But fire keeps you warm. It cooks your food if you're able to get anything. It can purify your water, which is, if you get sick out there from drinking bad water, you're going to be in trouble. One thing you can do is use the charcoal out of your fire and grind it up, put it in the water. Charcoal works like that activated charcoal somewhat. It's not quite as good, but it will work. And I've had stomach, like a food poison type stuff, and I tried some, and it did make a difference for me. And as I say, though, I read in the Air Force survival book, if it's tight, go white. If it's slack, go black.
And that's referring to what's coming out of you.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, dysentery, you have that, you want to go with the wood ash, not the charcoal, and drink that in water. Believe me, it works too. No, I'm sorry. You want to use, if you're dysentery, you want to use the charcoal. That absorbs the toxins and things that may be in your system. And then if you have constipation, you want to go with the white. And it does work. I've tried it.
That is added value to the ESEE Rack Pack podcast that you got that you were not expecting today. So, fire. One thing I want to address and talk about, I know a lot of people see us at Randall's Adventure and Training doing a lot of primitive fire. And while primitive fire is cool, one of the things that I want to stress that I think a lot of times people don't get is that 9 times out of 10, when people fail to get fire, why is that, Patrick?
A few reasons. Patience, you got to be patient, and you have to gather good material.
That's crucial.
If you can't find nice, thin, dry twigs, you have to make your processing wood down and get shavings and stuff like that.
How much material?
A whole lot more than you think you need.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at, is we oftentimes see people work to get whether it's hand drill or bow drill, whatever they're doing, they get a coal, they blow it into flame, and then they burn through all of their wood, and all their process, and they still don't have a fire.
Still don't have it established.
And they take the kit home with them, and they never reuse it. Because these skills are very perishable. They're hard to do.
So one of the reasons that we teach primitive fire that I really want to drive home is that not because in an emergency situation we want you, like I'm going to use my lighter and then I'm going to use my backup lighter, and then I'm going to use my other lighter
Yeah.
if that fails.
Waterproof matches. I always carry 3 sources to start a fire.
Regular fire teaches you so much about the fire making process.
How important fire is.
How important it is, the process as a whole. So once students get where they can make fire with bow drill or hand drill, any other fire making is going to be easier for them because they understand the process.
And we're oftentimes, I mean, like, we teach that in whatever weather conditions we're in. But if you're that jammed up in a situation, having a lighter doesn't ensure that you get a fire if you can't feel your hands, or
If you can't find a tinder.
or if you're injured.
Yeah, if you're injured.
You know, so what you want there is the experience and the economy of motion, and having that background of being able to know. The question I always listen for is whenever a student looks up to me and says, "Is this enough?" That means you're about halfway there. If you think you have enough, you need to double it. And especially, and we're just talking about getting a sustainable fire that you can walk away from 5 minutes and come back and it's still there. So understand, we're not talking about a fire overnight.
Yeah.
This is a fire that you can get created, you can start to thaw out hands, and before you start gathering the big stuff.
Well, you know, if you get in a situation you have to do all this to start with, one thing people fail to do, they get overexcited, they get anxious because they're lost, and their mind takes over in the fear aspect. Everybody does that. 99% of people do that. You want to stop, sit down, and look for everything. I forget the acronym about the stop, all the words, what each letter means. But you want to look around you and make sure that you are really lost, and that I can, I retrace my tracks? Learning tracking is a good skill to have. Did you break a branch? Did you leave some kind of what we call a shadow trail, or things like that? Can I go back? But if you don't have any means to navigate your way out of it or signal, then you need to stop and think, what do I need to do? I need a fire. I need a little bit of shelter so I feel more at home.
Come up with a plan.
Come up with a
Before
plan.
you do
Yes.
it. One big thing, everybody's heard of the leave no trace movement. That's getting real big, and that's a good thing. Don't trash up the wilderness.
Right.
But if you're lost, leave a big trace. You know what I mean? Break branches, make big scuffs.
Right.
If you're lost and trying to find your way back to the trailhead or your vehicle or whatever, leave a lot of signs, for others to be able to follow you.
Yep.
Hopefully find you.
What the old long hunters and frontier people, they would blaze a trail. They'd make chops on the tree. They'd do certain things. And you're not killing that tree just by doing that. If you break a branch and if you put some rocks in the shape of an arrow point direction you went, when you come back, you know you're on the trail because you go right back the opposite direction. And so there's a lot of things you can do to keep yourself safer if you just think about it. And when you walk through a certain path, a lot of limbs and leaves hanging out, you'll look back, you'll see the leaves, some of them be turned around backwards and things like that. That's just a signal.
Drag marks through grass or something.
Yeah, right. The grass will be laid in one direction where you walk.
Well, we're hitting something that we're kind of talking all around the main point here, and that is to just be observant.
Yeah.
So observe your surroundings, and this is something that I guess this is a survival skill or a skill that nobody really talks about much, that I'm just going to insert here is be observant when it comes to weather. Be observant when it comes to the situation.
Check before you go.
Yeah, check before you go. And then also, being a weatherman is the only job I know where you can flip a coin and keep your job.
Yeah.
I mean, you can be wrong 50% of the time, and people are like, man, it's all right. So, as a guy that rides motorcycles, we check the weather, my sons and I check the weather before every ride. Well, there's been a lot of times we've been rained on whenever there's been no rain in the forecast.
Right.
So,
in the mountains.
but the mountains don't lie, and the clouds don't lie, and your nose doesn't lie when you can start to smell that weather coming in.
That fresh air, yeah.
And so when you start seeing the wind shift and feel that cool breeze, so spending time in the wilderness and not immersed in your phone and paying attention is another skill that adds to this quiver of skills that makes it better. And it's also the same skill same skill that can keep you alive in urban environments as far as situational aware.
People can get in trouble to start.
Yeah, you know, you don't have to use survival skills if you have the observational skills ahead of time to keep you out of it.
That's the way they did it. I have a very old book, and it's about land gap navigation, and it talks about things like moss growing more on the north side of the tree, how you have more underbrush on the south side where the sun hits first because stuff goes bad. That's where deer like to bed down in the morning and evening on the south side. And the ants, well, they only build on the south side, things like that. And so if you see that, you know that behind you is south if you're looking toward it. So that old book's probably invaluable to somebody out here that didn't have anything, just studying things like that help you a lot.
Well, and it's getting to know your environment.
Yes.
Caleb Olander, our Bushwalker Outdoors, our buddy in Arizona, he's got a whole quiver of skills that we don't have because we don't live
In the desert.
in the desert. And yet Caleb is a primitive fire rock star, and I don't think he'll have any issue with me saying he came here and he had a hard time. He had a much harder time getting primitive fire here than he did back home, simply because the ambient moisture, ambient humidity is so high, and it's something he noticed immediately. And so we have a skill set
Right.
that's different from his, just because of our frame of reference and our location.
But you was talking about that out there, that drier heat. Here I've got two fire plows, coals, and only two. All the times I've tried it, it's very hard. And there may be somebody out there that's done it here needs, more. But we got out there, I got one pretty quick.
Yeah.
That was at the Overland Expo.
Yes,
Yeah.
out there in Arizona, in the high desert. And I got one pretty quick because of dry. But I see a lot of them guys that do it there out that way, But there is a big difference in the moisture.
So, given that we're talking about fire, let's talk about the hardware that we like for fire making.
It's hard to beat a big lighter. You just have a lighter and a ferro rod. Carry several ways to make fire. Don't have them all in the same place. So don't have it all in your pack in case you lose your pack. Don't have it all in your pants pocket.
Like your ferro rod on your knife sheath.
Yeah, have it kind of
It's separate, yeah.
layered. So if I did lose everything but my pants, well, I've got a lighter in this pocket.
When we talk about layering gear, if you're carrying 3 lighters, you're not going to carry them all in your front right pocket. You're going to have one in your pocket, one in your pack, and then one probably in a kit bag or something. You're wearing a chest rig, like the people wear a chest rig.
Like the big lighter though, if you've got it in a bag and it gets in there a certain way, it can get depressed and you lose all that. So I always cut a little stick in there and put a piece of duct tape on it. The duct tape's good for fire starting as well.
Right.
And it keeps it from being depressed. I never bother that. I just leave it like it is. I carry one in my pocket or whatever. I actually have a small ferro rod in my pocket on a keychain. I have it with me all the time. And of course, you've got that around your neck.
Yeah, I'm wearing a Wazoo survival necklace that will actually spark and make
Yes.
flame. Looks cool, but it is actually functional. And then for me personally, I there's Uber leaving and light my fire, Exotac. What's the word I'm looking for? Ferro rods.
Ferro rod.
Yeah. I've always had good luck with those. There's a lot of garbage-y ones out there.
I think Like My Fire is one of the best ones out there.
I will say this. I bought 2 Light My Fire, the Army style ones for the boys when they did field survival. Both broke within the first couple uses.
Wow.
And it was
At the handle?
the striker broke. So it's like the striker's molded into that plastic piece, and the striker flipped out of both of them. And so the rods are good; they throw great sparks. But one of the things I like about, I much prefer, me personally, a ferro rod with its own striker versus using the back of the knife. In a pinch, if I had, people gripe or complain about knives not having 90-degree spine. Within a lot of people, they say it hurts their thumb. So it's your knife, make it how you want it. In a pinch, I know that Mike Perrin and Jeff Randall have always said use the edge. That makes my heart hurt a little bit. But in a survival situation, I'm going to choke up on that and I'm going to do it.
if I have to.
Any sharp edge will strike.
Any night, like you could use a piece of porcelain.
Piece of glass.
Yeah, rock out there, break a rock open, even a piece of limestone scraping, you know.
Yeah.
River slick, do a bipolar strike, and you cleave it in half, and you've got a good sharp edge all the way around.
All right. So let's start to move into the next phase of this, and we're going to talk about, we're going to kind of key off of signaling, but I guess we want to talk about clothing real quick, as far as what we like. I mean, it's not quite a skill, but it is gear.
It's important.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to move into clothing real quick, even though it's not quite a survival skill. It is, although we do see people on TV that survive naked and afraid, or just mostly naked and really uncomfortable. Patrick, what I just want to hit kind of this topic real quick, or as quick as we want to. What's some of your favorite outdoor clothing pieces, brands, whatever?
Just a lot of it depends on where I'm going to be, what I'm going to be doing. I like ex officio. It's a little pricier than some stuff, but going down to the jungle, stuff that's going to dry pretty quick. And wet so much, what a few times it's not raining, you want the ability to dry out. Footwear is something that's very important. You need to be prepared to spend some money to get a good pair of boots, depending on what you're going to be doing.
Your feet's what carries you around.
Yeah.
It's very important. And socks as well.
Oh yeah. So it all kind of comes together. As far as I don't have any favorite brands really, except when it comes to rain jackets. You can't beat that Arc'teryx rain jacket that we've got.
It's a Arc'teryx Beta AR.
I've done some of the training in North Carolina. We're out in the mountains with the MSAR guys with just cheap frog cogs. Going through the roto and stuff, rhododendron, and it just gets shredded.
It gets shredded.
But so quality, what was you saying about buy once, cry once?
Yeah.
So that's really it.
James?
I have a Orvis fishing rain coat that's been real durable, and they're kind of pricey, but it's a really good piece of equipment. And that would be, and then I also have the Barber from England.
Yeah.
I have that jacket, which they've made this one certain design for Orvis, and it's really good. It's a, I guess you'd say it's a cotton oil finished jacket. It's a great jacket. Stay warm in it and stay dry. And like you was talking about, shoes are really crucial and important. And socks, to me, right up there with that as far. I love the Exficio. I use that quite a bit too. And I've been noticing, just like at Walmart, for a simple pair of pants that dries quick. The Wrangler's been making blue jeans and all this stuff for years, but they're making some stuff now that dries super fast. And I've bought 2 pairs in the last little while. I think I saw you wear something like that, Shane.
Yeah, Wrangler has a new, it's almost along the lines of a Carhartt pant.
Well, this is not that. This is made out of that different material. It's real lightweight, and it dries. I had to do a little rescue when the church went over for baptism here a couple of weeks ago. And this lady was crossing the other side of the holler, and her dad was with her. He was in his 80s, floating down on the tube. Well, he got beaten, banged up on the rocks really bad and couldn't get across. And she said, "Can anybody help us?" So I took my shoes off, and some of the other guys walked around with me. Because I'd had a little bit of water rescue when I took the tracking class with Bobby Joe Higgs years ago. And anyway, got over there. I said, "We'll stay below the tube and just float him right across. It wouldn't have been a problem, The water was a little swift there, but no problem getting over. This poor old guy was beat up. Beat up. But anyway, the point I was making, those pants I had on, they were dry in probably 20, 30 minutes. And
I hadn't seen those. I'll have to keep an eye out.
Yeah, I know that Wrangler has those. The ones I've been wearing are I think they're called UTG or ATG or something. One thing I have noticed is that we absolutely blow through gear.
Yeah, it don't last.
I think I think we spent 170 plus days. Patrick and I spent 170 plus days in the field last year. Some of those are more relaxed days than others, but that's in reality 174 days outside. Some of those may be in a classroom teaching. Some may be dragging yourself through roto so thick you have to take your pack off and shove it there in the hole in the roto to get through. So the gear that I have found, I bought a pair of Sitka, Sitka, Sitka
I know
Timberline pants in 2015, and I did my personal field survival class in them, and it is my wintertime uniform. They're insulated pants that reinforced at the knee and the butt. They are shredded, but they still work great. So I say shredded, they're picked. I mean, they're super picked, but they have been. It's my wintertime uniform.
They've been around a long time.
Oh yeah, yeah. I use the Beta AR jacket. I also have another Alpha SV Arc'teryx jacket. Their stuff is it's pricey, but they have a great warranty. I have a jacket from Arc'teryx, probably an insulating layer. It's probably 14 or 15 years old. The zipper kind of went south on it. I sent it back to them. They replaced that zipper and both zippers on the pockets. They did a phenomenal job. Anybody stands behind the product will have to support it.
Well, you can't beat wool for the outdoors and fleece because of the drying of fleece, the way it dries too, you know, of course, against the skin. Where you want a base layer, then you can take a base layer, then put on the fleece, just a fleece, simple fleece top, and put your windbreak on, you will stay warm.
I have found I am using a puffy jacket more. I've always been a fleece guy, and I'm using a puffy jacket more now. The down that they have, I'm using a 850 fill hydrophobic down from Outdoor Research. So if it gets, it still keeps, like in years past, if the down got wet, it was pretty much useless. But
They've got where they treat that down now with something that don't let it go to moisture.
right, and that jacket takes up no space in the pack. I mean, it tucks into its own pocket and weighs maybe a pound, and I can pull that thing out, shake it out, and it's. I find that I'm wearing fleece in the field as far as an insulating layer, less and less. I agree with you. I love merino wool on base layer. It doesn't stink or hold odors. If you're in the field 4 or 5 days,
It's wet, still keep it warm.
it doesn't smell or begin to hold body odor and build bacteria. So I use minus 33 or Hencappy, or I even have some smart wool base layers that go a long way towards making life way more comfortable.
Yes.
When you're out.
Silk is also, they say that silk is the warmest thing you can get. You know, the Japanese farm laborers and that the Oriental people. And I've bought the silk and wool things mixed together, you know. But I found out just buying silk by itself because it feels so good to the skin. You know, if you have to wear something 3 or 4 days sometimes, you know, when you're out like that, and you can kind of get sore and things like that, you know. And you mentioned about odors. I'll throw this in there. I've found lately that, like underarm deodorant, things like that, I don't like using it because it's not safe for the aluminum and phosphate stuff in it and all that. I'm just using a regular alcohol. I buy the green and the regular, and I mix them in a little spray thing. You buy 88-cent spray thing at Walmart, and just spray under my arms, and the odor's just gone, just like that. So that's a good something to carry. It don't weigh much either for times like that.
That's good to know. I always
And fire starting as well.
Yeah, take the wet wipes or something like that. Silk, I've had silk base layers and I just shred them. And I even do some of that with some of my merino wool. I used to spend, like, gosh, a merino wool, you know, lightweight, midweight base layer might run $100. And man, I was, I think the first couple of years I was here, I was having to rotate those things out a lot.
Well, you know, we're in an age where we have new technology. In the old days, they wore wool constantly. And just like a lot of the wool comes out of Ireland and Scotland, places like that, and I've got some of that. And it is a great wool, and it's very well made. And it's going to hold up better than just buying something at Walmart. It's supposed to be wool, things like that. But they're heavier, I do say, but as far as the weight, to me, it's worth the weight.
Well, I know Patrick, and I think you have one too, the Lester River Bushcraft.
No, I don't have that, but I've got a Woolrich jacket that I've used for years.
And then this past year, I actually found another company called Duckworth that's USA made out of Montana, I think. And that's kind of become my wintertime hoodie. You know, Patrick's wintertime uniform is probably those Duluth pants and that Les River Bushcraft Interact.
Depending on what we're doing.
Yeah. But the issue I found, and one of the reasons where I like wool, is I'm never going to pack that wool into the woods. But with our advanced bushcraft classes, we spend so much time around the fire, and if I'm wearing a nice puffy jacket, I mean, I've got a hole burned through. You know, somebody walks up, my back's turned, I'm taking a picture, somebody throws a log in the fire, and next thing I know, I'm covered in cinders. So wool is nice in that it doesn't burn, you know, like your synthetic stuff does. But while we're here on clothing, footwear is part of that. You got any footwear recommendations for the jungle or for
the jungle? It's hard to beat just the regular Altama, U.S. military jungle boots. Been around for 50-something years. There's a lot of companies coming out with their own version of the jungle boot, and I don't know if they're holding up as well. I haven't tested them. I haven't read any reviews on them.
We'll find out in October of next year.
As around here, my mind's go blank. Shane. What are those boots that you talked us on about?
Oh, Zamberlin?
Zamberlin. Yeah, Zamberlins are good. Scarpas. I know Jeff loves Scarpas.
Yeah.
It depends on what you're going to be doing.
La Sportiva.
Yeah, how rugged the terrain you're going to be in.
One of the things people will notice with us is people that don't quite understand what a day in the life of ours is like is we're wearing what some would consider mountaineering boots in a lot of places.
Overkill for what?
It's overkill for trail hiking. The issue with that is that on these search and rescues and a lot of our training, we are spending a massive amount of time off trail, oftentimes in steep terrain, a lot of times carrying someone in a Stokes that might weigh 300 or 400 pounds. I don't know why, but it always kind of seems how it goes is people spilling over the Stokes that you got to carry out. So having that foundation, that solid foundation, and that stability in your ankle and in the footbed, like having that stiff sole, people think it would be a drawback. It's one of the biggest pluses I have. I can kick bucket steps into loose, loamy soil if I had to, so I can get traction, like you see the guys, mountaineers do when they start kicking buckets into snow. So the ability to do that, have that foot protection. I know Jeff and I were searching this super steep draw on a search up in the Smokies, and I stepped onto a rock, and the whole top of the rock gave way, or so I thought. It was moss, and I went and began to slide, and my foot chopped into a hole. My toe did actually, and that arrested my fall. The problem with that is it bruised my big toe to the point. But if I'd have been wearing lighter weight boots, my boots are the Zamberlin 2092s or something like that with a lot of foot protection. Had it been something less than that, then I'm fairly certain I would have wound up with a broken toe, if not a broken ankle, or just a wrench knee or something, because it could have been really bad. Footwear, James?
I like the Solos pretty good, and as far as backpack and stuff, they're great for that because they are a hard sole, but they do cause my feet to be wore out more at the end of the day. So that's when in camp you'll have your lightweight pair of Crocs or something, or a pair of moccasins. I think sometimes we overkill, not you guys, in the terrain you have to go in when you're search and rescue, but for hikers and things like that. Grandma Gatewood hiked the Smokies when she was right around about 70, more for our kids. And she carried a shower curtain, a tow sack with her gear and stuff in it. So we do overkill, but I like the convenience of a backpack. I like a good pair of shoes, and I like to be able to change my socks every evening when I get into camp. And I have one pair that I'll sleep in, that I'll pull them off, and if I'm in a tent while they stay in there, and I change them out that night. Because you can't take too much good care of your feet, I remember seeing stuff in Vietnam with the boots with the drain hose you was talking about, and like that, and they had to doctor their feet constantly in the movies and things like that. So it is important to take care of your feet. Footwear.
All right, so Patrick, why don't you introduce our next chapter for us? What do you think?
We're going to talk about knowing how to use what you carry, the tools that you carry. We talked about in the navigation part about compass, know how to use it, GPS if you got one, know how to use it. We see a lot of students come through and they might have a knife on, and they tell you I've had this, my dad got me this when I was little, or whatever. And you look at it and it hadn't been used. Brand new, it's not been used for anything. A lot of people don't want to use that brand new knife because they're afraid of a bullet, and they'll never be able to get it as sharp as it was when they first bought it. So just even like it comes to fire making, people will have, come to a class with a ferrule rod.
They won't throw sparks.
They won't throw sparks. They had it for a year, but
Never had the coating knocked out.
hadn't tried it, hadn't tried to use it. Anything that you're going to be carrying or see yourself carrying in the wilderness, practice with it, play around with it, make sure it works. Make sure it works for you. You might find something you don't like about it. You might want to go a different route as far as it's not going smaller. You might want something smaller because you don't need the big chopper or whatever. Know how to use stuff safely, like the tools, like the cutting tools. Know how to saw safely, how to use an axe, how to use a machete, whatever you might be using. Know the ins and outs and how to maintain it. How to get it back sharp.
You gloss over that maintenance part, but knowing how to sharpen your blade, how to do field repairs, what to carry to do field repairs, I think is one of those important things. James?
I agree with all that about the sharp objects, as we call them, sharp tools. And many times we see them come in with a knife that it's going to break or tear up or something in no time. So we always have loaners, ready to loan them so they can handle a knife, what we consider a good knife. And the ESEE 4 to me is a good all-around knife. I like the 3 too. I've always liked the smaller, shorter knife. And Morris Kahansky's always taught that as well, that the blade about the width of your hand, width, and the handle maybe just a smidgen more, which will give you like 7.5, 8 inch knife. You see people carry big butcher knives and big choppers and things like that. Nothing wrong with that. I mean, they got their use,
Yeah, I love them too. But.
Yeah, for splitting wood, which if you had an axe, you'd be better off. And but for building shelters and things like that. But a small knife is more versatile because it'll do carving, it'll do just all the finesse things that you need to do, And so I'm a big proponent of liking just a smaller knife. I do make big knives, but a smaller knife is much more useful. And as far as an axe, if you don't know how to use it, don't get out there and hurt yourself with it. You learn these skills in the backyard first, and then when you get out in the field and you really need them, then you've already kind of adjusted to it. Every knife I own, we like to see knives about wore out. Anyway, that tells us people are using their knives. Then my boys come in there with pristine knives and stuff. They've never used it. You can tell it right off. And then them old boys that's got the knife that's all beat, banged up, and it may not be sharp, but it's sharp enough to do a job for it. So we'll kind of cover sharpening and stuff, help them out with that. But and saws, very useful. If you got an axe, a saw, and a knife, you're covered. You could build your log house. You can do it with an axe, but it's much easier if you got saws.
Everybody talks about batoning and the never-ending debate about batoning, and I'd rather have an axe, but in truth, sawing's way more efficient than an axe or batoning for sure. If you can saw something, I'd rather let the fire do the work, burn it down if I can.
Yeah, exactly. But we build in the class. Patrick teaches how to make that saw, and it's a very useful tool. And most people probably have never even used a saw, honestly. I grew up doing stuff like that because my dad was a logger. When he was a boy, he grew up, and he logged some. When I'd be out of school, I'd have to go in the woods with him, and I hated it.
Boy, you ain't been cut till you've been cut with a Swiss Army pocket knife saw. I mean,
Get in there.
It's tired, yeah.
Those things will flat lay. I mean, those are the worst cuts we see. A lot of times are from saws or a saw jumping a cut, and people not having their hand when they need to. Real quick, I really want to get down to the nitty gritty on. I think it was Moore's that said the more you know, the less you carry.
Yes.
And what I see, I'm guilty of it myself. I mean, within our company, I am the admitted gear hoarder. I'm the guy who's the gear guy. I've always been technically minded, done a lot of gear reviews and stuff over the years.
Nothing wrong with that.
Even before I got to ESEE, it's just been kind of how I leaned. My experience in cycling, quest for lighter weight, more efficient, all that stuff, I think is what.
My age just make me want to get lighter weight.
Yeah, yeah. But oftentimes what I see is I see a lot of people that go into the woods loaded down with so much stuff and encumbered with this stuff they feel like they have to carry, that they don't give themselves the ability to really enjoy the process. It's just a slog. It becomes a death march because they're so weighted down. Now you can go too far, but this is where adding skill in a lot of these places, learning to get the most out of your fixed blade knife. If you choose to carry a fixed blade, you might decide, I'm not taking the saw and the felling axe and all on my overnight hike. I'm just gonna work around it. You know, I'm gonna get the most out of this fixed blade. I'm gonna, if ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain, I'm gonna try to diminish some of that pain and start taking stuff out. And something I've done, I've always been a gear person, and I'd rather go into the woods more prepared than less prepared.
Yeah, I'd rather have a little bit overkill, not a lot.
Right.
Just like talking about axe, that little Gibson axe, ESEE axe, it does a lot of stuff, and it's very useful, splitting kindling and things like that. And so you can still be kind of lightweight and have a few things with you.
Well, we want to be smart about it, but for me, something that I've done, and I've just tried to make it a practice, is I recognize that within myself, I have this propensity to overpack, overprepare, and take way too much stuff. I was really taught this lesson big time on the very first wilderness week when I came on staff, 5 years ago, basically. We had a 4-day slog through some of the steepest parts of the Smokies, often off trail, and a torrential downpour for 4 days.
Rain the whole time.
And so my heavy pack was straight up waterlogged.
What weight do y'all usually carry like that? Because I know you carry extra gear for what you're all doing for search and rescue.
I don't know why, I don't remember if I weighed my pack on that one or not.
I felt like my pack weighed 1,000 pounds at the end because everything was wet. Soaked through.
Of course, you gain weight that way.
Yeah.
So for us on not field survival, but on a search and rescue mission, it's mission dependent. If I have to carry technical gear, like technical rope gear, it's going to be a lot heavier.
Yeah.
If I'm a RIT team, rapid intervention team, I know on one particular rescue, I was part of a RIT team, and there was swiftwater involved and high angle involved. So I was carrying about a 1.5 mile hike into this junction that was below the actual rescue. So I carried swiftwater gear and high angle gear in, and so you're packing heavy on that. We try to keep our pack. I think Jeff's pack's probably 26, 27 pounds.
25 to 30.
I was going to say,
With water.
30 is max for me with water, yeah.
But if we're going backpacking, we're normally going to train somewhere, so we're carrying more gear anyway.
Yeah.
And so if I'm going recreationally, I'm going, I've invested money in a lighter weight tent or in a hammock setup, which doesn't often, I've not found that.
Sometimes they don't save you.
It don't save any weight. Don't think that you're going to save weight going to a hammock setup by the time you have a tarp and everything else. But I do sleep better in a hammock, and I can. There's a lot of times we go places where I can't sleep in a tent because there's no flat ground.
Yeah.
So a hammock means that we can get a decent night's sleep.
Yeah.
Most times anyway. But for me, I will purposely go. I talked about that wilderness week, and start handicapping myself with certain gear that I've become really reliant on. And so it's one of the reasons why I came to love that CR 2.5 so much. Is normally I'm carrying my laser strike or something, and I was like, nope, I'm carrying a Swiss Army knife and my CR 2.5, and I never had. Of course, I had Patrick with me, so that helps.
Yeah.
If people will stop and think, what did I have with me that I didn't use? What did I not have with me that I really could have used? And write it down. You make notes at the end of the trip or something.
Do a gear audit.
Yeah,
Like, what can I do without?
what did I lug around those 4 or 5 days and didn't use a single time that I thought of? And as people grow in knowledge and confidence, then you see them a lot of times starting to downsize what all they're hauling in because they're learning how to be more efficient.
Get everything refined down to just what you need.
It's like
Then if you want to carry a luxury, you can carry something.
that's like Ruben going around with just a plastic tote sack, you know.
Yeah.
Base weight's what, like 5-6 pounds, something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So
Ruben's a special breed,
that's
though.
tons and tons of experience.
Well, for me, one of my backcountry joys, mood lifter for me, is coffee. And so I've tried anything from the grinds, Skull Bandit pouches to something else. And what I have found is I just use a jet boil stove. I like the convenience of a jet boil. I used MSR Whisper Light for years and a Svea before that, where you about burn your eyebrows off and all that stuff, priming the pump and setting them on fire before they start working. The jet boil and MSR reactor have been really, really good, and that's something I can stand by. And the jet boil has a French press that I can make some coffee that'll just about make the spoon stand up in it if you stir.
I like the AeroPress, the to-go AeroPress really well. And you just put it down like in a mortar pot. It fit actually in a smaller pot. And you got your water pot to boil in, and you got your coffee maker there. You can also put your coffee down there as well. So that'll work in there. But I take that with me everywhere I go. Sit right over there.
To learn to get the most out of your gear, I think you kind of need to challenge yourself sometimes. So maybe you have a really nice tent, but have you ever slept just under the tarp?
Under a tarp, you don't have the condensation like you do in a tent, which will help you sleep colder too.
Yeah.
You got all that moisture hanging up there now. And there's a guy named Ray Jardine, or Ray Jardine, I think his name. I've got his book, and he has come up with something. They come up with climbing gear. He was like an aerospace engineer or something. This guy's done everything, man. And it's pretty amazing if you follow him on his YouTube thing. I guess it's YouTube. But he's all about lightweight. He makes a quilt, and if you think about it, I just got up under the quilt this morning. I got out of bed. And of course, I'm inside a house, and I've got cool air and I've got hot air, But a quilt is what we slept under most of our life. If you got a good ground piece and a good quilt, and you can also fix it where you can fix like a toe box in that quilt just by drawstrings and stuff. Not done that all. After seeing Rubens, I made me a quilt, and I fixed me a drawstring on the bottom where my feet go into that. And that quilt don't weigh nothing, and it packs down super small. And if you've got one made out of down, then you really got a plus, especially if you got the down that the moisture don't affect. But I find the quilt really nice. I find the tarp really nice. And I've got 2 or 3 tarps here made out of the Tyvek. I'm talking about the real Tyvek, not the plastic roll stuff, but the Tyvek. It lets moisture out and doesn't let any moisture in. And I took it to a big commercial machine down here, a washing machine. I'm washing that so because my wife don't like it.
All right, so as we're moving into close, this whole thing is about outdoor skills and with a little bit of gear sprinkled in. I don't see how we can have this conversation without talking about mindset. And I'm going to kick it off with James. James, you go first.
Well, mindset is crucial. Like we mentioned a little bit earlier about people panic and things like that. It's not, sometimes if you're an outdoor person and you're going out all the time, it's not if, it's probably just a matter of when something may occur in your life. So you need to mentally be prepared for that. And the mind can be a tricky thing, but if you have been reading and studying on things like that, to me the mind is the most crucial tool that we have, bar none. I mean bar none. Because if you don't have the mindset, you're going to die anyway. A lot of people give up, and the mind will play tricks on them. You got to sit down and start thinking. And if you'll do breathing exercises, inhale through your nose, fill your abdomen up, and your stomach all the way up, and then exhale it. Do that several times. you will start to relax, and your mind will start to relax as well. If you get your mind relaxed, then you've got half of the battle won. If you allow your mind to do what it should do, and resort back to the skills that you have learned, that your mind has stored away in there. Just if I want to do something the next day, I'll say in the morning when I make my coffee and I go to sit down to drink, sip on my coffee, I'm going to remember what I'm supposed to do. I do things like that with my mind. I've been trained it that way. I play chess against the computer. I can't beat it. Once in a while I do, but it works the mind a whole lot. And things like that. I read all the time. I've got 2 books laying on the table now. One of them's on survival, and the other one's on eating healthy and preparing meals a healthy way. So I work my mind that way too. I don't just let some kind of a high-tech instrument do it for me. I want my mind to work. So I read a lot of books every year, and I think that's one way to get your mind trained, I guess is the word I'm trying to say. So anyway.
I love reading case studies about different survival scenarios or different events in history or POWs of World War II and studying the mindset of those people that made it through or made it out of the situation. There's a lot of case studies where somebody has done everything you could possibly do wrong in a survival situation, but they made it through. They were rescued at the end, or they made it out because they would not quit. They would not give up. And that's one of the main things we stress in our field survival. Of course, all our survival classes, but field survival class is never, ever giving up. Finding something inside you to keep putting that one foot in front of the other and sticking it out.
I think, excuse me, I think mindset is the most overlooked, underrated skill. We've talked about case studies where, you've had people that are completely capable and have had all the right gear and got out there in a bad situation, folded like a lawn chair, and it didn't end up well. And then on the flip side of that, as you say, where they went out there and did everything wrong, but they just had something in them that wouldn't allow them to quit. It is my opinion that our society has got exceedingly soft. We worry about microaggressions and what we say and what we do, and I'm not just talking about the men. I think there's value in suffering. There's value in discomfort. There's value in testing yourself. And is it possible that you can just find yourself in a bad situation and survive? Yes. Is it probable? Probably not. It's going to be one of those things where I think the more you challenge yourself and have to train yourself to endure, and sometimes that you're enduring something physical, sometimes it's a mental challenge. Those instances and opportunities where you can train and learn about yourself are what will determine and dictate how you respond when the chips are down.
Expand your comfort zone.
Right.
Like you said, test yourself, see what you can endure, set goals. One of the things that Jeff always says, Granddad used to say, is you can get used to anything except hanging from your neck. Hang by the neck. And that's true. I mean, look at some of the stuff that humans have made it through and survived, came through on the other end, and it's just tough. Tough, mindset and all that.
I think about the movie Alive. Mm-hmm. You remember that plane crash up in the mountains there, and they end up having to eat people. At the honor party, they end up eating people, but they did survive. I would hate the fact if I had to do that, but I'm going to survive. Like I said, I don't eat pork, but I'd eat 10 pigs if I had to stay alive, and then go back to the way I live my life. I'm not going to be foolish about it, and I'm going to make it somehow, Lord willing.
Well, I think it's just one of those things where if we're not careful, we get real good at lying to ourselves.
Test.
And if that's called the Dunning-Kruger effect, where you think you're an expert on fire because you build fire in your backyard in ideal situations so you can roast marshmallows, and yet you get into a situation you quickly come to learn that I am not as good as I thought.
Practice makes perfect. That's the reason that saying's out there.
And for me, I've had instances where that's proof for me where I was not as good as I thought, and now I'm in a situation. The time to realize that you need training is not when you're in a situation that requires, advanced training or any training for that matter. So I think the more we can push ourselves, and it has to be a lifestyle. It has to be a cognizant choice that we go out and make. Say, I'm going to go do something hard. And so I think every now and then we all need to check our dipstick.
I've been a Tom Brown student. Tom said something that I've always remembered. He said, go out into a survival, like you're in a survival situation, but you take your backpack with everything you need, just put it off to the side and leave it over there and try not to use it. He said, but you've got it if you need it. And that's a good way to train. And
You're purposely handicapping yourself.
Right, yeah, in the backyard or whatever, wherever you're at. You can train no matter where you're at. Just you get the mindset, hey, I'm out here in a real life situation, and I've got to do this and that if I'm going to make it. And so push yourself. I have fasted several times for 7 days, and I wouldn't take water till the third day, toward even the third day. And so I pushed myself. I've probably done that 10 times in my life. If you've never done that, there's an awakening that takes place. And just like your mind illuminates everything, I can explain this. And I've been told and I've read that your body will go through it and complete all new cells in 7 days. And it's refreshing your body. It's really good for it. That's one way to test yourself, because that's the first thing most people think of anyway, is food. Water is far more important, and far more, and the shelter is, to get you out of the harsh environment. And of course the fire comes into play there for purifying everything. But we've taken people out for 7 days with a knife only, and Patrick and I took people out for 5 days with a knife only, and it gives you a taste of what it's like. And that's a good training.
And how hard it is.
Yes, that's good training, guys. I don't care who you are. You put yourself through it. And we allowed them bring a knife, and that's it, wasn't it?
We let them bring something to boil water.
Boil water, right.
Because
Hot
making
water.
a burn bowl
Yeah.
would take up so much time.
Yeah. So, but that's testing yourself.
Well, if we can end on that note right there, is to test yourself on your terms, so that when you're tested outside of your terms on somebody on Murphy's terms, you're at least be better equipped. If you like what you're hearing, give the ESEE Rat Pack podcast a subscribe. It'd be nice if we get some reviews. That would be good. Share us, and I know we've had a little bit of a hiatus. Patrick and I have been burning up the roads in the last few weeks, so we're going to try to get back on schedule. We appreciate you listening. I think we're up to 16 followers now, and we're appreciating all those there. James, thank you for joining us today, and we'll definitely be back.
Thank you for having me, guys.
Y'all take care.